For a long time, marketing's been based on surveillance, tracking people, invading privacy, chasing clicks. But Judy Shapiro believes it should be based on trust. She's a portfolio CEO with a data product, an agency, and a media platform, all focused on proving that ethical marketing can scale. Let's see if she's right. I'm Bryon Morrison. Let's get to the leaders list.
Everything is happening through these screens.
How are we getting the most out of that person?
I want to see this thing grow long term.
Amazing story. You have such a unique perspective on that.
Schedule a 2-week vacation.
I applaud those models.
Undervalue.
Secure your digital footprint as well.
Why were they even put in place in the first place?
Only the most adaptable survive.
Let's get to the leaders list. Judy Shapiro, welcome to the leaders list.
Thank you for having me, Bryon. I really am excited to be here.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this because, so Judy, you're a portfolio CEO, and you clearly love the startup and build phase, and but you've seen it from a Fortune 500 perspective as well. So why don't I turn it over to you? You just give us a little bit of an overview on Engage Simply, Topic Intelligence, Trust Web Times. Tell us about the empire you're building.
Thank you. Gosh, empire is a big word, but it really has one focus, which is to create a digital marketing ecosystem that is ethical, honorable, accountable, and measurable. So Topic Intelligence is a performance data platform that is geared for driving acquisitions. Engage Simply is the services arm focused on acquisition. The third thing, Trust Web Times, is really a industry education outlet. We publish articles. What does it mean when the cookie goes away? What does it mean when AI is introduced, and those kinds of things. So they're all meant to drive to a single focus point.
Yeah, and all of that around trust and integrity in data. And
Correct.
If there's ever been a more important time for this subject, I can't imagine it. This is key. And so tell us a little bit about your background and what drove you to this, because I think sometimes, you know where it comes from, right? We fly too close to the sun, and all of a sudden we start to recognize there's some broken things in this. So tell us a little bit about that journey that got you to this point where you care that much about it.
Yeah, that's a great question, and it kind of I've been in the business long enough that I could see systems evolve, right? And so I started at a big advertising agency, one of the largest, in fact, right? And I knew I was joyful there. I loved my time there. And if you asked 100 people at agencies today, are you having a good time? I don't know that answer would be much more than I'm getting by. And same thing with the internet. I was at Bell Labs in the late 1990s when it was being built. I knew what the mission of the internet was. I could feel it. That's what it was. It was noble. It was elevated. And now I see how the whole digital ecosystem has gone to trash, and I'm heartbroken. So part of me is always looking to take the best of what was, merge it with what the best of that is today, and create a new model. Whether it's a new model for ad agencies, whether it's a new model for data. We don't track anybody, by the way. We track nobody. We are tracking topics. That's it. That's what drives acquisition. And so it's the same kind of thing. Yeah, sorry.
Well, let's talk about that, because you do have a very different perspective, and Topic Intelligence is an incredibly interesting platform. So tell us about this whole concept of topics versus data, because everybody's used to cookies. If they aren't familiar with cookies, they do know that they're tracking email addresses. They do know that they're trying to find some specific contact point, which does introduce challenges, right? Then all of a sudden I have data that maybe I shouldn't have.
Or don't need, or is wrong. It goes back to before digital, right? When I was at AT&T, or when I moved to Lucent, it was always about topics. We couldn't track anybody, so it wasn't even a model that was particularly attractive. And I could see clearly how the engines of a topic intent-rich ecosystem works. In my opinion, digital went what I call the dark side of the moon, because they went cookies, because technically you could whip it out of thin air. I could tomorrow create 1 million cookies, whether it's on a publisher site or, driving traffic to a website. you don't know what that is. Is it people? Is it bots? It's any number of things. But tracking and selling and buying data profiles of people, quote unquote, crazy profitable, crazy easy. And they decided to go that route. So topics is harder on every level because you have to understand context. Like, what is the web page talking about in human terms, not keywords? How do you buy contextually? Again, the industry, adtech absolutely rejects that kind of precision in media because there goes their scale monetization model. So it's an uphill battle. It's been an uphill battle. I am grateful for all the clients that have, taken the leap. It's intuitive, but it's not easy to abandon what you think you know.
Yeah, I love the fact that it's grounded in historic practices that were really empirical.
Yes.
And worked exceptionally well. I mean, the direct marketing industry certainly understood how
my dad
to
was a
look
printer.
for signals.
I love direct marketing. My dad was a printer. That's exactly where I started. It was like I sold, I bought an email list. I sent out emails or direct mail, and the rest, it was what it was.
Yeah. Well, but the point is you looked for signals as opposed to looking for the specific individual. But even in that environment, like you built a database and you managed that customer.
Yes.
So talk about the difference between topic orientation versus serving the profile.
That's a great question. So it's a matter of the stage in the conversion journey. Where topics and intent really operate is when you're first trying to get a prospect to engage. Once they're on your site and they've kind of begun to show interest, that's where a high quality CRM system can absolutely tailor that experience for that user. And so one starts the conversation, which is the topic data, and then a CRM then furthers that conversation even within the context of topics. So you come in on a particular topic, whatever that is, you're now in the database, the first party database. This is not third party. Then you can absolutely send them the type of content that they like, the kind of content that matches what they're about, and it becomes a really productive back and forth between an audience and a brand.
Yeah, because they've made the request of what they're looking for by behavioral moves that are incredibly clear, and it's a direct relationship.
Not because they have a profile. There was an Ad Age study recently done that said about half of profile data within, let's say, the profile database is wrong. And the example they particularly used was a mother with kids. And oftentimes they didn't have kids, or the kids were out of the house. I mean, any number of things, because it's really hard to keep these databases clean, updated, and ethical. So it's a tension that the industry created, and it kind of ignored it. And that just pissed me off. I was like, how could we ignore basic privacy? Like, it was just like, nah, I don't think so. And that bothered me.
I love it. I love it. Judy was pissed and she solved the problem.
Exactly. Like, how could this be? I just didn't get it. I mean, half the time in the first 6 years of this venture, I was like, I don't get how this could be. How is this possible? So
Engage Simply helps companies start to work with understanding how they can do a better job from an agency perspective of setting up their brand to connect with the right audience. It's a classic marketing
acquisition
model.
Correct. It's services for acquisition marketing. We kill it with e-commerce, B2B, anywhere where there is a topic journey to conversion. If you asked us to sell pens, I'd politely say we're not your best shot, because you don't need a content journey to sell a pen. But whether you're talking about luxury goods or e-commerce or health or beauty, financial, you name it.
High consideration.
If it's not, doesn't even have to be high consideration. It could be $50. It just needs a topic journey. It just needs a topic journey. Nobody's going to click and buy. If they can click and buy, then, and so it becomes like in fashion, like for e-commerce. People are going to look around. They're going to go to other places. They're going to do a lot of things. So why is your brand of, jogging outfit better than the 2,000 other jogging outfits? Content-centric journey to conversion. That's where we rock it out.
Got it. So you'd been doing that service, you've been offering that, you've got a really nice client roster that you've been working with. Then you started recognizing the need for a tool to be in place. Was that something that, when you went through that process, did you think about that as I'm going to build that within Engage Simply? How did you decide to create a separate company, separate brand?
Wow. I've gone through a couple of iterations, and you're exactly right. So I actually started with the topic orientation first. There was no Engage Simply, and there was no topic intelligence. It was like, okay, in my bones, I know topics is the way to drive business. Now what? Right? So we kind of started both at the same time, but they were housed exactly as you said within Engage Simply. And then we realized some clients might just want the data, but they don't need the services. They've got a well-oiled system inside. Others needed everything, so some didn't need the data because they were so niche, right? So we realized it's probably best to separate out. The Trust Web was the corporate brand that was there all along. So again, that is our mission. We're not going to give a brand untrustworthy metrics. We're not going to, track people that is untrustworthy. We're not going to run in media that is untrustworthy. And it goes up and down the spectrum of how do we filter what we do for our clients. And I'll tell you a little secret. I have never lost a client because I refused to run in a channel that they asked for. They said, I really don't care as long as you make it up. And again, I had a lot of issues with Facebook there for a while. We do it now because they've kind of cleaned up their act, but I would not run in Facebook for years. Now we do, because it was like, I can't ethically give them money to continue to abuse its audiences. We stopped doing things that have a high spam rate, like, I'm sorry to say, X. We used to advertise in X far more regularly because X is a topic engine. So it's a good fit for what we do, but no, they're just untrustworthy. Brands cannot trust where their ads are going to run. So we're constantly making these trust assessments to make sure that we are trusted guardians of our client's budget. And we take that role sacredly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really from an industry perspective. That's the Trust Web Times, right?
Yeah.
You're analyzing. Talk about how you determine when a company goes in and out of favor in their practices. Is that by identifying their reported processes, or is that by leadership and recognizing how they operate? How do you guys determine who is trustworthy and who's not?
Yeah. So here's a little secret. When we do pitches, we don't even do formal agency pitches. I'm evaluating them as much as the reverse.
Sure.
And in my mind, it's always about the leadership. If the leadership, there are certain things that leaders say that is a clear giveaway on either side, right? Mm-hmm. On either side. And we like to work with people that honor the work we do, that don't take it for granted, that don't exploit it. And at the same time, it's something we could work with. If I can't help a company, I won't take the business.
Wait a minute. Let me make sure I'm clear on this.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like the Facebooks, the Metas, the X, the media.
Oh, sorry.
Publishers. How does Trust Web Times identify trustworthy?
Got it.
Not trustworthy?
That's a great question. Okay, redirect. The answer really lies in how effective they are at what I call the core essence of any channel, which is acquisition. So if I see really high metrics for a channel, high click, high engagement, high likes, high whatevers, but as they say in Yiddish, bupkis coming out the other end, then something is awry. Either the metrics dashboard is wrong, or there's some conversion issue. So I'll always start with, is there a conversion issue on the client side? Like, is the landing page not appropriate? If I know that's working well, then I dig in much deeper into what the channel is doing. And we, sometimes we run in hyperlocal. I love running in hyperlocal. Those publishers need the support. And so the difference between, let's say, when I'm running in a hyperlocal versus, let's say, a Facebook is, you can't even compare the two. Hyperlocal agencies don't like to do it because it takes more time, and it does. And I'll do it every time. It supports the local publishers. It gets better outcomes for our clients. And that's an example of the client's going to trust us to do what's right for them. without hesitation. Without hesitation, we don't arbitrage anything, meaning we don't arbitrage any media. We don't. We just like, here's the cost. It's a pass through. So they know there's no, upside for us if they do more of this in ad tech or less of that. We're not arbitraging any of it. It's completely, utterly 100% transparent.
Yeah, there's no fox in the hen house.
Yeah.
Love it.
Silver fox, but okay.
I love it. Okay, so talk about, Judy, you've gone through this process. How long have you been building these entities?
So we've been in business for 13 years, something like
Yep.
that. It's really been in the last 6 years where we have the platform was done, the services piece was done. So on one side, we introduced a completely different data platform, and on the other side, a completely different agency model.
Yeah.
So the agency model that we work with would not be recognizable to a standard agency person. It is absolutely completely different because the model of the agency was created 40 years ago. That is not how business works today. So it's a bad mismatch, and you see agencies struggling. And part of the reason people are so miserable is because they're struggling. When you're killing it, you get happy people. It's a happy place to work. It's just more fun. And so that's why both had to evolve. If I had just evolved the data and I tried to do services the same way, it wouldn't be great. If I tried to just do services without the technology to back it up, wouldn't have been great. They both had to be recreated and had to kind of be developed in tangent.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about, we talked quite a bit about topic intelligence and the concept of topic-based marketing. So we understand that. Talk to us a little bit about how you have formed the agency model in a different way, because you're right. I think this is a time when you have to think about transformation, right?
Yeah. We have our own topic intelligence metric that Engage simply uses, which answers one simple question, honestly. What are the topics that drive conversion? Our success metrics that we work with, and we actually do performance for our clients in advance of spending media. So again, like direct mail, if I bought 100,000 names and I sent out 100,000 pieces, I would estimate what was going to happen. We do the same thing in digital. We do the same thing. And our key metric is improvement in the cost per lead. Once we achieve that, then the rest is downhill skiing. So orienting ourselves around tracking topics to understand which campaigns at a topic level are doing well. Understanding clients do not need to see attribution at a channel level. Our clients are now used to, they don't even bother to ask, well, how did Facebook do? Or how did this do? They don't ask us anymore because we're measuring it at a topic level. Our optimization is at a topic level. Our programs are at a topic level. Even SEO, even AI. And because AI is topic centric, probably our strongest offering right now is AI search optimization, because they're not keywords, they're topics, which is, we're the data for that moment. That was probably our biggest amazing insight that we didn't really plan for. Sometimes just you're in the right place at the right time, and the rest of the business cares for itself. So SEO is keyword based, right? We know we put keywords on a page.
Yep.
AI has nothing to do with that. It's all about topics. A big topic, then the topics underneath. Well, how do you organize that in an architectural sense, like from a data perspective? That's where it's so completely different. So we don't do SEO the old way. We do SEO the new way. We don't do metrics the old way. We do metrics the new way. So you have to reorient your agency stack, how you do what you do, how the people do what they do. And it's so much more fun because, let's say, data is available to everybody on the team. It's not just in the research group who then dishes it out in a presentation once a quarter that everybody falls asleep at. It's meant to be a inspiration tool. Data inspires. It's not meant to constrain.
Yeah, that's such a great perspective on that. When I just think about most people, when I talk to them about portfolio orientation and managing multiple companies, I mean, you're a powerhouse. Obviously, we know that. And how do you keep up? And what's on your leaders list right now?
Great Great point. What keeps me sane first and foremost is an amazing team. As wonderful as any person might be and hardworking and all of those other wonderful things, it's the team that makes the difference, honestly. And so understanding how to do that has been something that I've been working hard at. Like for 6 years, I didn't quite crack the code, but now we did. Number two is, for me, the different companies are really the same entity. I mean, yes, corporate wise, legally, they're different, but it's all in the service of the same mission, the same goal: how to drive ethical, functional acquisition. So while there are different places, and it does get sometimes like resource allocation, do we put it here? Do we put it there? Right? There are some real practical questions, but in my brain, it's one holistic entity. It's one single supply chain, from data to analytics and ending with programs. So it's easier than it sounds, I think.
Well, there's a verticality to it, right? I mean, you certainly can understand that as long as in your mind you see all of those things working in concert, then you can find clients who see that
Exactly
working
right.
in concert, and then it becomes very easy for all of them to work together.
Exactly right. Because as we said earlier, they kind of were born together in the same womb. They just split off when they were born because it seemed more modular to suit clients' needs.
Sure, but you still have triplets.
That's true. The third one is just my personal passion project. There are not that many people that have a perspective of what was, what is, and what should be. Again, you just have to be in the industry long enough to know, here's what worked back then. Yes, there were a lot of good things about agencies back then. Here's what didn't work. Here's what works in digital. Here's what doesn't work. So for me, it's a passion project just to bring some balance back to the ecosystem. So it used to be analog, no machines, then all machines. Like now we're like, are we going into a hyper machine mode? The answer is no, don't worry.
Yeah.
And this also gives me the privilege to be able to really help people understand that you don't have to chase the latest tech. There is no upside to that. Just chase what works for you. Like too often, like, I think I should be using AI more. Why? Like to do what? So a lot of it, like I've written a lot about AI, people are just panicking that, I joke, sometimes it's a little bit like sex. Everybody thinks everybody else is doing it more often and better than they are. It's an old joke. It's not my line. I forgot whose line it is. I wish
I know. I was going to say, I love that. I've heard it before. That's great.
And that's what's going on with AI. And like everybody's just making themselves nuts trying to figure it out. And I'm like, chill, slow down, just slow down. Don't believe all the promises, first of all. If I could just get people to do that. A lot of my work is don't believe the hype. If your thinking brain can't understand what the hell they're selling, then there's something wrong. It's not you. Because that's what adtech does. It makes you feel like you're the idiot. Well, but algorithm, more algorithm, AI algorithm, and you feel like an idiot. If they're making you feel like you can't comprehend it, there's something, your alarm should be off in your head at that point.
So what does your tech stack look like then, Judy? Because, there's a reason that martech exists and adtech exists, and they're, as we continue, the argument is, as you continue to get better at it, you have more specialist solutions that are better at identifying and solving problems. So that's how we end up with all of the tools, right? Then, you can talk more about this, but I'm sure then you go through this natural process of heavy acquisition, and you see consolidation, and so then there's we're a little bit of obfuscation, in terms of like who does what and how does it actually work. So I get all the natural transitions, but there are some tools out there that are working really well for people. Like you said, the CRM aspect of it, once you become a customer, that data management platform is different.
Yep.
But what should an ad tech platform and a martech platform look like for a company?
Okay, here's where I go radical. So sorry about this, but I go radical. Those terms are idiotic, in my opinion. They are fundamentally idiotic. Now, guarantee you,
Which
if you
terms?
want
Adtech, martech?
adtech quote versus martech, that's the first idiotic distinction that I think is artificial, frankly. And if we asked, again, if we did a poll right here, right now, and said 50 people, what's the difference? Most would get it wrong, right? And so the idea that, and again, I could explain the difference, you could explain the difference, it's academic. So the question for us is not what is our ad tech, martech, what is our acquisition tech stack? That's the heart of the problem. And an acquisition tech stack has a very specific architecture. It has customer data, customer bill. I mean, it has a very comprehensive approach. That's hard to do. martech, you could throw on a couple of, systems, HubSpot, email automation, and, you got a martech stack. Same thing with adtech. Are you buying through a DSP? Are you buying through an SSP? Are you enriching that data with unified IDs and all this other crap? It's nuts and it's expensive. So instead of buying tech that drives your business, you're buying tech to drive somebody else's business. That never made sense to me. Because if you're buying that platform or you're buying this unified ID service or whatever it is you're buying, you still don't have an outcome to show for it. You hope eventually you put all these pieces together, you end up with some kind of outcome that you could talk to the CEO about. But
those plug into the acquisition model, right?
Well,
those are the elements needed to create that acquisition environment.
Yes, but think of it like a power grid, right? The power grid should not be ad tech versus martech. The power grid should be a directionally focused power grid. And again, our case for our company, it's about acquisition. So yes, I could plug in all these tools into the power grid, but I have to be clear what the power grid is designed to do. Once you have that level of clarity, then yes, plug in the right ad tech, martech tools, of course. But to have an ad tech stack sitting here, and then you have a martech stack, and that's why I call it the 3 A's: attribution, acquisition, analytics. That is the nightmare of every single marketer on the agency and brand side. Why? Because we have martech and ad tech stacks. Exactly right. Because everybody's trying to prove their own worthiness. So a client is using an ad tech, play in their ad tech stack, right? But they're just doing one thing, whatever it is they're doing. Well, how do you knit it all together? So then you have different companies that promise to standardize and put it together, but then there's always aberrations in the data because it wasn't built to do that. It's a friggin' nightmare. So if you have a power grid that is about, let's say, acquisition as an example, now you could be very selective about what's useful in that journey or not.
Got it. And who is the ideal customer that we're talking about for this topic orientation and this acquisition level?
The tougher the acquisition challenge, the more we love it. So again, it goes back to topic journey. That's excruciatingly hard to engineer. It actually really is. It really is. So you need the data. So if it's a really challenging acquisition moment, we love it the more. So, because we then unpack it. How do we get into geo? How do we get into SEO? How do we optimize ads outside of PPC if that's what's being used? All of those indicators really become powerful to help you move away from just the standard, let's run ads, let's measure it, to what will drive business.
Okay. So, Judy, if I'm looking at, I see the challenges that you deal with. You've gotten over that. You've built these 3 entities. You have your twins, they're toddlers. And I should ask you, what growth stage would you say that you are in today?
Growth. I don't know how to answer that in the sense of, we're seeing, 40, 50% year over year increases, just organically. Ironically, we do not spend that money on advertising. Most of our business actually comes through referral partners and word of mouth. Again, the focus of acquisition is you need us or you don't. And this is why I don't even do agency pitches. I don't participate in RFPs. I don't bother because RFPs are not usually meant to pick a winner. It's usually meant to reassure them of what they've already decided. That's the honest truth. And so sometimes I've seen poor agencies get caught up where spend a lot of time in the RFP and the client only uses it to leverage it against the current agency they already have. So the only time I'll participate in RFP, the only time I will ask one question: why are they looking now? And if the answer is fuzzy, well, we're just shopping around, or, we think we could do better. No. If I don't hear a problem that they're trying to solve in the current, discovery process, I won't touch it. I won't touch it. Saved a lot of energy, negativity, depression.
Yeah. I mean, what it sounds like is you know yourself, you know your company, and you know when you can win and when you don't win. And so that does make it a lot easier than constantly trying to get introduced. And if you're being introduced right now by your existing customer base, I mean, that's fantastic. You'll get to a point where you can't do that, right? You'll get to a point where your size will require you to go find the next player in your total addressable market.
Well, here's a funny thing, because that's another thing we changed on the agency side. Since we don't do RFPs, like how the hell do we get new business?
Yep.
So we did set up a formal partnership program, right? Formal, as opposed to just ad hoc. We have a certification going on for some of our clients so that we can be more certified, more credentialed to do specific things that they need. And so we're kind of approaching that problem, because you're right, we'll hit a limit where at some point, but we're doing it as a scaled growth because quality to us is job number one. So we're not trying to grow just like go from X to multiple X's. We're trying to do what I call controlled explosive growth. It's tough. It's tough.
It is tough. That makes sense. So our listeners, they're running businesses where they've got anywhere from 100 employees to a couple hundred, or 500 employees. They're building out their own marketing platforms. They probably have agencies. What are the things that you would say should be on the CEO's leaders list based on your experience and what you're seeing in your marketplace?
This question is my favorite of the entire conversation, because it's hard for a CEO to know what to focus on. Put aside all the CEO duties, but just in terms of running and growing their business. So in my opinion, job number one is for the CEO and the leadership team to get deeply and intimately involved in understanding what is a user's conversion journey. Is it 2 touches? Is it 22 touches? That tends to go under their radar because they think, the marketing team is handling that. And sometimes it's not about what marketing does or doesn't do. It's about you offer a free tool. There needs to be a product enhancement. So unless the conversion journey is a leadership level expertise across the organization, that really can constrain, because they tend to throw it over the fence to marketing and hope to God they know what they're doing. It's far broader.
Man, I love that, Judy. I agree completely. I do not. And I was going to ask you, well, most CEOs will say that is the marketer's responsibility, but it really is an operational understanding.
Exactly.
And having the ability to listen to the customer. So we say all the time, everybody goes, oh, no, customer's number one. And then we go, how do you listen to the customer? And it's usually like, well, we do a survey or we do something, it's a small portion where you can listen to the customer so many different ways across that journey.
Exactly. And that's where the topic analytics gets so hot and heavy and exciting, because you don't have to do expensive, like one-on-one interviews, which is pain, right? Just see what people reacted to. The insights are obvious if you bother to look. And that's why I'm a big proponent, which leads me to point number 2. Data is the fuel of the organization. It does not belong in a silo that happens to be either the marketing team or the research team or whatever. A CEO should understand the key data points of their business. Because if they don't get that a user journey has 22 touch points, or they don't understand that the conversion cycle is just 3 days for a particular solution, they'll never be able to optimize their overall brand value because they're always going to be just misfiring. You know, those watches that are always 3 minutes late? That's what's going to happen. It'll just never be right on the thing. And the third point, and I there is irony to me saying this, but for heaven's sakes, be a little tech skeptical. Do not buy every single goddamn promise. I cannot tell you how often a CEO says, "This looks great. What do you think?" I'm like, "Do you understand how it works? Do you understand why it works? Do you understand any of that?" And they're like, "Yeah, but it says," and I'm like, "Okay, let's understand." And so just be skeptical. And one thing I will offer to anybody in your audience, for free, if you're looking at a new tech and you're not sure how to think about it, I'm happy to give a 30-minute session on what this does, how it works, and whether it's not right for you. I have no opinion about whether it'll be right, but at least you'll understand it. But too often people are just seduced by promises that make no friggin' sense.
Yeah. Silver bullet mentality, right?
Exactly.
As long as I can plug in this one thing, everything will be okay.
Everything will, and the truth is, in acquisition, it's never one thing. Probably that's lesson number 3.5. It's never one thing. It's never one thing.
Well, that was my point earlier about the stack, right? I mean, there are so many situations where we think, look, if I just get Adobe, like my life will just be solved, right? Or HubSpot will bring this entire Salesforce has everything I need in it, and Zoom Info says everything I need is in there, and so it is one of those things. I think it's super important for people, and that's a very generous offer that you're making, and I would suggest people take you up on it, and your details will be in our show notes, but people should reach out if they're serious about building the right tech stack, because it is important to have the right tools in place. Exactly. And I love your point. If you understand the journey and you truly understand your metrics, then you can understand what tools are necessary to make it happen.
In that order, not the reverse. Let me just point out. Sometimes they buy it and then, but now we could do that. No. If you're doing it that way, you're building your house backwards or upside down.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so the listeners have diligently gone through this entire episode with us, and they've listened to every word. What's the first thing they should do as soon as they shut this off to go realize this opportunity?
Wow. Okay, that's a heavy question. In my opinion, probably the most useful thing is to figure out what systems, technologies, and service providers they trust, and create, I trust this list, I'm not sure list. And then see what the gaps are, because you need a solid core foundation of trust in vendors, in platforms, in who you're dealing with. Make sure you know who those are, and then you could start building around that core column. Right. So
that is so interesting, Judy. I mean, I wonder how many organizations have gone through their vendor list for, as trust as the number one piece. Doesn't that sound like table stakes, that if they're going to work with someone, they trust them?
No. Marketing is a little bit like therapy. People think the therapist can solve all their problems, but they don't necessarily trust them. And my frustration is with clients who want easy answers to difficult problems, right? Yeah. And so they get hoodwinked. I'll use that word. They will get sold stuff. And let's even say it does what it promises. It doesn't solve the core underlying, issues that company needs to deal with. So there's a certain level of comfort with everybody that they're giving money to, sure, but trust is a higher level attribute. It's a higher
That's
level.
That's so funny. Like at Proxy, when we start with a client, we literally, our onboarding process is called speed to trust. Because the whole point is, well, how do you deconstruct a relationship built on proving and doing what you say you were going to do? Yeah. And if you decouple that from the relationship, and this feels lovely and everybody's happy, and the promises, you go back to how can you deconstruct that so that you can literally show proof of trust
Exactly. And then you could build solidly from there. So I think that would be go home or go to the office, have a big cup of coffee, and you might only have 4 vendors. You might have 104. Same exercise. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's not even what you think might works or doesn't work, ironically. It's not even that either.
No, I think it's about whether or not you feel like you can actually ask that person a question and you're going to get the best answer for you versus the best answer for them.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
So, and I'll point out one thing, like if I had met you and you said, no, topic intelligence and engage simply, it's the same thing. And we operate in the same way. So if you work with me, you've got to have this tool. You separating that is a perfect example of living what you believe and saying to someone, no, I can help you here. And I also have this solution, but you don't have to do those things together.
Exactly
That's a
right.
perfect example of like a trust orientation.
Exactly. And where we thrive, our retention rate is frankly the envy of most agencies, is because it's unequivocal. There's no wishy-washiness. There's no debate. Should we, could we, it's so easy to run a company that way. If you're not thinking every decision through a multiple of lenses, is it good for us? Is it good for our revenue? It's just one filter. After that, it's easy. So that's why that simplifies a lot of the complications as well as running the companies. It just makes it so much easier.
I love it. Judy, you nailed it. How do you simplify business? Because you can't scale if it's not simple. So that was incredibly helpful. Thank you for joining the Leaders List. We were thrilled to have you.
Oh, I enjoyed this thoroughly, Bryon, and I am honored that you asked me to join you today.
Thanks again.
Bye.